Welcome to the conference room of the Regional Science Center in Schmitt region in Poland. This is European Rover Challenge, the second edition, and we have a great pleasure to talk to Dr. Harrison Schmitt, the last man on the moon or the 12th of the moon. This is the first question.
Number 12.
Number 12.
Neil Armstrong was 1 and I was number 12.
Okay, so because many people say that last one to go back from the moon was Eugene Cernan.
Yeah, but he was only number 11 to go.
Okay.
See,
so how was it? What did you feel actually when you first landed on the moon and you first going up to the ladder and first step on the moon?
Well, first of all, it was a great relief to be there, and that we had not had any problems. In fact, the Apollo 17 mission had almost no technical problems of any kind. It was a tribute to the workers that tested and built and operated the vehicle that we just had no problems. But I felt, very privileged to be there, and of course, as soon as you can, you start to look around, and we were in a magnificent mountain valley, 2,000-meter mountains on either side, the brilliant sun, a black sky, and of course this blue and white earth was hanging over the southwestern mountains.
And did you already know that you are the last mission to go to the moon?
Oh yes, that was known for some time, that Apollo 17 would be the last of the Apollo visits to the moon. There were other activities planned with the Apollo hardware, the Skylab program, and so forth, but we were the last to go to the moon, and we knew that. Unfortunately, we knew that for a long time.
And many people don't know actually about the rover itself. I have to ask because I'm Polish, about the lunar rover itself. Did you know that it was built and constructed also by a Polish constructor from Poland?
Yes, we were very close to the operations of the General Motors Corporation and Boeing Aircraft and the Marshall Space Flight Center, all of whom were very deeply involved in the construction of the rover. And I believe Becker worked for the General Motors Corporation, who were responsible for the chassis, for the chassis and the mobility side of things. The electronics and other things, I think, came from other directions.
So your place of landing was specially selected because of your presence over there. And what do we know actually from your mission about the moon, about the origin of the Earth and right now the moon?
Well, the main thing that we've learned from all the Apollo missions, and maybe particularly from ours, Apollo 17, and to some degree from Apollo 15, is that these huge basins that we see on the moon, the dark features of the moon that are now filled with lava, Mare basalt we call it, that those basins formed very early in the history of the solar system. The youngest is probably no more than 3.7 billion years old. And because there are at least 50 of these basins, and probably more, that we just haven't been able to identify, we know that the Earth was exposed to a very violent history in the first 1 billion years of its life as a planet. And it turns out also that that was a period of time on Earth when life was beginning to organize itself and eventually become replicating.
You received a lot of questions, same questions actually, during the last 2 days. Will you come back to the moon, or will you want to come back to the moon? But actually my question is, why we're supposed to go there?
Well, the reason for going back is far more than science, although a great deal of good science is left to be done. We've only explored a small part of the front side of the moon. We've never had any samples or any landing that we know of that has ever come from the far side of the moon. We may have lunar meteorites that have come from there, but you don't know that. They could have come from almost any place on the moon until we get more information. And we're trying to do that with these automated satellites that currently and recently have been in orbit around the moon. But the primary reason, I think, for going back to the moon is twofold. One is it has tremendous energy resources that someday are going to be, I think, very valuable and useful here on Earth because they are very environmentally sustainable, if you want to use that expression, and very efficient. It's a helium-3 fusion resource that the moon has that we just don't have here on Earth, and that type of fusion is very efficient. It produces no significant radioactive waste, and so the moon can be a great reservoir of energy for the Earth. Equally important, probably to many people, is that the moon is the best place to learn how to go to Mars. Mars is going to be very difficult. It's a long transit, a long return, and a very difficult technical challenge to land on Mars. There's just enough atmosphere to cause problems, not enough to do much good to help. So the moon can be a place, a staging area where we learn how to operate in that vast distance that Mars encompasses. We just won't do Mars like we did the moon. Apollo had direct communications with very little delay with Mission Control Center. Whereas with Mars, the astronauts that go to Mars are going to be on their own. The Earth can help them plan, it can help them analyze information, but it can't participate directly in any landing or any orbital insertion or anything like that. So the moon has, I think, a very, very important role to teach us once again how to operate in deep space, how to operate with the constraints that Mars is going to put upon the first astronauts and the eventual settlers of that planet. And so it has a great role in the future of humankind in that respect.
Well, there's a question about humankind, because many people think that with trips to the moon and right now the mission to Mars, it's only for scientists, and for ordinary people, they have nothing from it. So how to explain to ordinary people that we have to go there? Or do we have to?
Well, there certainly are major, what we call geopolitical reasons of why the moon is important. The free world has to be, I think, active and in fact dominant in space, as it has been through much of Earth history, most recent Earth history. And that is something we have to consider. It's a geopolitical issue. Of course, there's a great deal of science to be done. There's a great deal to learn about going to Mars. But maybe the critical thing right now, when you look at the world situation, is geopolitical.
But you think
and that's important to humans. Now, and once you're settled on the moon,
yeah,
and once you're going there routinely and exporting helium-3 and other resources to Earth and to space stations and the like, then the cost is going to be much less than it would be today, and lunar tourism can even be considered, I think.
Do you think it's the real one? That we can really, I don't know, in 50 years from now or 60, we can make lunar tourism?
It's a matter of cost. And I think there will always be people who will be willing to take whatever risks are left, and those risks don't have to be very high, but you have to have a routine access in order to get the cost down.
So coming back from the moon to Earth right now, we are here on the European Rover Challenge, the second edition, and you've met the teams, you see the rovers we are building. Many people say that it doesn't make sense to make such a competitions, because it's only for playing the rovers, building some toys, and they are treating like the toys. Do you think that these students, these teams, are important for the space sector, or is just a competition for toys?
The most important aspect of this, in my mind, the European Rover Challenge, is that it is giving young people new experiences. They're having to work together, they're having to look at technologies and try to not only compete with each other, but to be successful in putting various technologies together in order to operate within the constraints of the challenge, which are quite significant in various ways. But that's an important experience, and now all of the young people who have participated here can put on their resumes their biographies that they have participated and they have done such and such against the competition. That's very, very important, and it's important to their future, whatever their future might be, whether it is associated with space exploration or whether it is in some other endeavor that has an engineering component to it. Education, I think the most important thing that you're doing here is educating young people, giving them that kind of experience, encouraging them to go on and use that experience for other things.
So they actually can play some big role in Mars or the Moon before?
If these young people decide that's what they want to do, they can play a big role in it, and they can influence, I think, their leadership in Poland as well as elsewhere in Europe and in the world to move forward and to use space as another accessible realm of human experience. That's very, very important. It's going to be their decision, though, what they do with this experience, but I think it'll benefit them no matter what they decide to do.
And the last question is about coming back to space, a Moon and Mars. The Moon was actually, if I can say, conquered by Americans, and because there is American flag everywhere in these missions. But do you think that Moon should be like International Space Agency mission?
I think the Moon can be an international effort. The most important thing, however, is that there are clear-cut paths to making a decision, and those decisions can be made efficiently. Deep space is not very forgiving, and it's not going to work well to have delays in decision-making. And so you can't go around and ask every country what the decision ought to be. You can't. There has to be a pyramid, hierarchical decision-making capability, as we had in Apollo. Now, does it have to be one nation? I don't know. I think that's up to however such an international system might be put together. There are models that can be looked at. The Intelsat, Inmarsat communication satellite model had a very clear set of decision-making pathways. The many nations were involved, but they were involved as users, and their voting rights on big issues, not operational issues, but the big issues were based on their use of the Intelsat or Inmarsat systems. We can look at that. I've done that in various papers, trying to see if that particular system could be adapted. It may not be the ideal system, but it might be one that could be worked out so that this problem of making timely decisions can be solved.
So thank you very much for your interview and mostly for coming here, because I think it's one of the, not only mine, but many people here dream to talk to the actually not only American hero, but the nation, the world nation here.
Well, thank you for the invitation. You're doing a wonderful job here. The European Rover Challenge, I think, is well on its way to being a fixture in the activities of Europe, and obviously competitors are coming from everywhere, outside of Europe as well as inside.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure.